Resuming debate, the honourable member for Saskatoon Grasswood.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure tonight to speak to C21. Even though I represent an urban riding, I can tell you, Madam Speaker, there is a lot of interest in this bill. Saskatchewan firearm owners are respectful. They're law-abiding citizens, and many feel that this bill is simply an infringement on their rights. You know, when this bill came forward, actually it came forward last fall, I was kind of hopeful that this bill would include measures that would be tough on crime and crack down on illegal smuggled handguns that are part of the 32% increase in violent crime since this government took office 8 years ago. First off, I want to thank the grassroots movement in this country, like hunters, like sport shooters, Indigenous groups, like farmers, who really are concerned about their livelihood, they're concerned about their sport, their culture, and above all, their public safety for pushing back against the Liberal Party's agenda. Many amendments, as we know, came forward. Many were pushed aside by this government as Conservatives on the Public Safety Committee listened to the testimony and recognized the many flaws in C21. Now, a major concern with this legislation, we've heard a lot of it tonight, targets competitive sport shooters in such a way they could lead to the demise of the sport. Legislation effectively means that those who use lawfully obtained handguns to participate in internationally recognized sport will no longer be able to do so. This bill outlaws competitive sport shooting except for individuals who are already training for the Olympics. So the amendment by our party that was put forward allowed members of the International Practical Shooters Confederation continue to participate in their sport, but it was voted down. Now, Madam Speaker, I want to talk about my province of Saskatchewan, and I want to thank the leadership of the provincial government because, let me tell you, they are well ahead of the federal Liberals.
Hear, hear.
Back in September of 2021, the province of Saskatchewan appointed its own Chief Firearms Officer, proactively getting ahead of the Liberal government. Saskatchewan has several concerns with respect to C21 and the ability for the new legislation to be effectively implemented, support by having the impact of the public safety. I consulted with Robert Freberg. Many of you know Mr. Freberg. He's the Chief Firearms Officer for Saskatchewan, and I think he's nationally recognized as the expert in this field. Many of the initiatives in the legislation rely heavily on both law enforcement and the ability for chief firearm officers across Canada to issue prohibitions, revocations, the refusals of a license, and be the primary resource to investigate public safety concerns related to firearms. Now, Mr. Freberg has told us that the province of Saskatchewan has been so successful in this area since the province has not only designed its own provincial chief firearms officer, but it has also established the provincial firearms office, who is currently supporting law enforcement efforts to deal with the illegal use and possession of firearms. This includes mental health, domestic abuse, criminal activities, enhancing overall education, which is a big one, around safe storage and proper licensing. The Firearms Act clearly states that Canada should negotiate a federal contribution agreement with the provincial CFO offices, which has not occurred since Saskatchewan and our neighboring province to the west, Alberta, actually took over CFO positions back in 2021. The province of Saskatchewan is currently not only funding 100% of all the work currently being performed by Mr. Freberg, who is the Chief Firearms Officer, but also the entire office, but has provided significant additional funding for the establishment of a new provincial firearms ballistics lab to assist the law enforcement in firearms involved in criminal investigations. And I might add, Madam Speaker, with no financial support again from the federal government. Currently, it can take 2 years for results for exhibits that have been submitted by police to the Federal Ballistics Lab for testing. This actually occurred after the RCMP closed several provincial labs, including the one in Saskatchewan, that previously supported those important law enforcement needs and initiatives. How can Bill C-21 be successful if the agencies responsible for the overall implementation and enforcement are not adequately funded and are now being asked to do much more with much less? I would say my province has spent over $9 million and are waiting for a dime from this federal government to help them out. Keep in mind, Madam Speaker, we started a Chief Firearms Officer nearly a year and a half ago. Why? Because Saskatchewan did not trust the federal government. Many on the announcements around the May 2020 Order in Council handgun ban and C-21 have severely impacted the focus on the Canadian firearms program and its performance in the critical public safety investigations required, as they are now negatively impacting managing the fallout of excessive call volume from licensed firearm owners due to the hastily announced legislation that was put in place with absolutely no consultation or input by them. Many law-abiding firearm owners continue to experience lengthy delays, actually some over a year now, trying to simply renew or acquire a firearms license. So how can they stay in compliance or be properly licensed if they can't even communicate with the Canadian Firearms Program due to the program now being fully inundated with call traffic? The current handgun freeze and subsequent inability for law-abiding firearm owners to acquire or even transfer a handgun has significantly impacted not only the public safety, but also the financial investment and loss in value that these individuals in my province are now experiencing. If an individual should become deceased or even experience a health or financial issue that creates a situation where they would like to initiate a legal transfer to another licensed individual, today they simply can't do that. This results in the individual having to surrender their restricted firearms to the police for destruction or engaging the extremely limited scope of services for a very specialized licensed dealer or exporter. Dealers can purchase, as you know, Madam Speaker. However, given there is an extremely limited market for resale, they are unlikely ever to participate. There is no buyback program, as it currently stated in the May 2020 OIC. Therefore, there is a highly likelihood that given there will be no current provisions to ever grandfather the existing owners, as there was previously under 12.6 regulations, which did allow for the transfer to still occur between licensed grandfathered individuals. These current firearms, Madam Speaker, could possibly become diverted in some circumstances rather than staying registered and managed as they presently are. Thank you very much.
Then comments, the honourable member Fleetwood Port Kells.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I wonder if the honourable member could comment on the fact that firearms-related incidents in northern Saskatchewan have gone up by 75% from 2017 to 2021. or the fact that the shooting in the Danforth in Toronto was done with a gun that was stolen in Saskatchewan. And I guess it really comes down to a fundamental question. Who on earth in this country, other than police or military, needs a handgun?
The honourable member for Saskatoon Grasswood.
Yeah, thank you. It's getting late, isn't it, Madam Speaker? It is. Most of these, if not all, are illegal firearms in northern Saskatchewan. We know that. A lot of the tough on crime that the Liberals haven't done over the last 8 years is now paying massive dividends in northern Saskatchewan, as the member talked about. We are in trouble in northern Saskatchewan for a very good reason, because they're not tough on crime. We have seen many people day in, day out, go into court, should be sentenced, aren't, come out, do the same tactic that they did a week ago or a day ago, and this is part of the problem that we have right now in northern Saskatchewan.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for his speech. He does a very effective job as Vice Chair of the Canadian Heritage Committee and often chairs our meetings, and I appreciate his work. However, there are some things that need to be corrected in his speech, there's no doubt. First off, of course, the fact that there are no guns being removed as a result of C-21. He knows that. Both G4 and G46, because of NDP pressure, were withdrawn. So that is fact number one. Fact number two, the emphasis on C-21 is on ghost guns. And ghost guns have been a scourge of many parts of this country, a tenfold increase in the lower mainland of British Columbia. This is something that law enforcement needs additional powers to combat. These are gangs, criminal gangs, and criminals who are using these untraceable firearms. And so that is the focus of the bill, and that is something that he should be in favor of. Thirdly, he did mention sports shooters, and I was surprised this morning to see that the Conservatives had tabled an amendment to remove an exemption for sports shooters who are Olympic or in the Paralympics. That is an exemption that we believe, because the NDP did table the amendment on the International Practical Shooting Confederation, we believe.
We have a point of order. The honourable member for Edmonton-Wetaskiwin.
Madam Speaker, the honourable member knows that it is against the rules of the House to mislead the House. The honourable member knows that he was approached by a hard-working Conservative staff member who asked him personally to understand that there was an error made, an administrative error made.
This is part of debate. Order, 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 and I do agree. Order, order. The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby and the honourable member for Edmonton-Wetaskiwin. These are points of debate, and it's not proper to be debating while I've got the floor here. And so I would ask the honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby to finish up. He's got 7 seconds before I call the question or I get the answer from the honourable member.
So why did Conservatives table this motion to remove the exemption?
For Edmonton-Wetaskiwin, I would ask him to not speak while someone else has the floor, and if he continues, he can either leave the chamber or be asked to leave. The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Thank you. So the Conservatives have tabled this as motion number 12. It removes the exemption for sports shooters for Olympic and Paralympic competitions. And Conservatives have filed this. And so my question to my colleague is simply, why did they file this?
The honourable member for Saskatoon Grasswood.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me talk about ghost guns, because 3 hours in this House, the respected member from Kootenay, Columbia, which former RCMP officer for over 30 years, brought it up to this government over 2.5 years ago. They did nothing at that time. And then that member from Kootenay, Columbia asked a very important question. Where is the education in this law? Where is the education? I got to thank the Saskatoon Wildlife Federation for all the great work they do. But you know, Madam Speaker, with this bill, this federal government has done nothing on the education process going forward on C-21. They should be ashamed.
For a brief question, our member for Cypress Hills Grasslands, a brief question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. You know, there's a lot of issues that come with this debate here tonight, but I appreciate my colleague talking about the reality in urban Saskatchewan versus rural Saskatchewan. I was wondering if he wants to elaborate on that.
The honourable member for Saskatoon Grasswood.
Yeah, believe it or not,
answer.
even though I'm an urban MP, I get a lot of calls. We get a lot of people because, you know what? In our province, people want to be outdoors. They want to sport, you know, shoot guns and have sport. I got to thank the Wildlife Federation. They do a wonderful job in our community. And people want to be outdoors. The one thing I will say, Madam Speaker, I am so proud of Bob Freberg and the province of Saskatchewan. They still are owed $9 million from this federal government because they haven't paid for the officer or the office.